PrescottJROTC, and you're going to get that up on the screen.
Yes, sir. I certainly will.
Make sure it's green.
Yes, it is green. Hello, my name is Colonel Denny Peoples. I'm in Prescott, Arizona. We're blessed to have a former POW, local Prescottonian here with us, Colonel retired Jim Kula. A lot of great experiences he's going to share with us. Everybody give a round of applause, please.
Appreciate it. Now, I got to hear what y'all are going to do when you grow up. Colonel Peoples, I haven't heard what you're going to do when you grow up.
I am going to live on the beach and fish.
There you go. Good.
Is what I'm going to do.
And Mr. Braverman, what are you going to do when you grow up?
Continue.
Continue. All great plans.
I'll be a substitute teacher forever.
Yeah. No, super. Well, I would definitely appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you this morning. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what happened to me, an experience in my life that I hope doesn't happen to you, but it could. But if not what I went through, it could be something similar. And my point I want to make out of all this is as you are growing up, maturing, getting your education, gaining your experiences, all this training you're going to receive is very, very important. And so make 110% of every training opportunity you have, because you never know when you're going to have to reach down and use that at some particular time in your life. I grew up in New Hampshire, and very interesting to hear that you'd like to go to Dartmouth. You know, that's great. And I lived there till I was 18 years old. I went to Manchester Central High School, and I wanted to join the Air Force, and I knew that since I was real little. In fact, there was an Air National Guard base there called Grenier Air National Guard Base at the Manchester Airport. And right up, my house was under a flight pattern, and I used to see C-119 boxcars fly over all the time. And I said, how do I get to be able to fly those airplanes? And so I started reading about the Air Force, trying to learn about it. I read about Embry-Riddle, even though I only thought there was a campus in Daytona Beach, until I got a job at the Prescott campus. That's the reason we came to Prescott, Arizona. And then I joined the Civil Air Patrol because there were no junior ROTC programs at the time. And I didn't want to join the Scouts, so I joined the Civil Air Patrol, did that for 4 years during high school, and then applied to the Air Force Academy my freshman year of high school. And everybody goes, well, why'd you do that? I said, because I wanted them to know that I wanted to go there. And two, I wanted the experience. I wanted to go through the process. And where are you? Of getting ready to go. Take the physical. Go take the physical exam. Take the whatever test that was that we had to take. And I went through all that. I did it 4 times. And the first 3 didn't count because they couldn't accept me. But they still let me go through that whole process. So every year I'd apply, go through, fill out the paperwork, which is a wonderful experience, okay, filling out all these applications. And then I got my senior year when I did it, and I knew this is the time it really counted, as well as all my SATs and whatnot. And I got an appointment to go to the Air Force Academy. So my first airplane ride, even though this is what I wanted to do, was to fly from Boston to Denver to go to the Air Force Academy on a commercial airplane. Went out there, did my 4 years from 1965 to 69, and then graduated and got a pilot training slot and went to pilot training in Laredo Air Force Base in Texas, and was there for a year. And it was during the Vietnam War, and I wanted to get a fighter aircraft. And you are selected for the type of aircraft you get. Actually, you select your aircraft, but you get to pick in the order of your graduating class. So I tried to do real well during pilot training, and I was able to select a fighter, and I got an F4, which I don't see a picture of on the wall.
That was my first plane,
F-15.
F-4D,
Yeah.
wing. I flew that right out of pilot training.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And went there to George Air Force Base in Victorville, California, in 1970 to 71. And that's where I met my wife, Jane. They would bus females from Southern California out to the base to meet, you know, these young fighter pilots. And so I met her, and first thing I did was check her ID card. I wanted to make sure she was 18, and she had just turned 18, so I felt legal.
Some things never change.
They don't, you know, because I'll tell you, they drilled it into my head, you know, make sure they're 18. So it all worked out, and I got an assignment to North Carolina at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, and I left Jane in Southern California, and it took me about 2 weeks to make the phone call to say, come join me. And so she flew out, and we got married at Goldsboro, at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base. And I was there for a year, and that's when I got my assignment to go to Vietnam. I went to Vietnam, was there 3 months when I got shot down. We had just celebrated our 1-year anniversary of marriage. I'd been gone for 3 months, but we had been married a year. I spent 8 months in a prisoner of war camp, and that's what I'll show a little bit here as an experience again. And then came back, went back on active duty, and spent the next 26 years in the Air Force. So I spent 30 years. We traveled all over the world. My daughter was born again in Goldsboro, North Carolina at the base in 1976. Sarah, and she's now married with our grandson Luke, who's 8, that lives down in Anthem, just north of Phoenix. So that's wonderful. I mean, life's great. We moved 22 times. We lived 10 years in Europe. I maintained operational status, went from the F4 to the F-16, and I don't see that picture up here either. I see lots of F-15s here.
I try to teach them that those are lawn darts. So
Yeah, okay, yeah. And then you're right. And in fact, my last operational flying was right after the Persian Gulf War. It was called Operation Provide Comfort. We were protecting the Kurdish population in the northern part of Iraq, and we were assigned at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. We were there for 2 years. Then when we came back, we started looking at how we want to end my Air Force career. You're talking about what do you want to do at the end of high school. Jane and I and Sarah had to talk about what do I want to do when we leave the Air Force. And we said, let's go and take a ROTC job. So the Air Force sent me here to Prescott with my family. And for 1996 to 99, I was in charge of the Air Force ROTC unit out at Embry-Riddle. And at 30 years to the day, the Air Force said, thank you very much for your service, now get out. And so I did. And the next day, I went to work at Embry-Riddle as the Dean of Students. So I put on some civilian clothes and went to work the next day, and I was the Dean of Students there for 10 years. And retired, I guess the final time, I don't know if you ever retire, in July of 2009. So a little over 4 years now. Jane and I are still trying to figure out this retirement life. I'm around all the time, and in her world, I guess you'd say, and so she's having to learn how to absorb all this. So that's why we're in Prescott. Mr. Braverman and his wife Susan, we were the first folks to move into the apartments over here, the Legacy Apartments in Prescott Lakes, in 2000, yeah. And we like it. Heard a lot about your detachment. You all have a great record, a lot of history, and I read about you in the paper all the time. I guess it came out a couple of years ago and talked to the debt. And a great opportunity, and thanks, Denny, for letting me come out again. So, training, very important. In all that experience, I went through a lot of training. In fact, my daughter says, all you did was go to school. I went to service schools, Squadron Officer School, Air Command and Staff College, Senior Service School. I got to go to the Naval Defense College in Rome, Italy for 6 months. Went to 3 different survival schools before I even got to Vietnam. Learned about survival, resistance, evasion, escape, how to handle yourself in an interrogation type of standpoint. And I sat there going, oh, well, okay, I guess I got to hear all this, never realizing that I was going to face it firsthand. So what I've got here is an accumulation of some documentary evidence, I guess you'd say, that of what happened to me starting on the 29th of July, 1972, a long time ago. But that morning I got up. It was kind of weird because you'd wake up, you'd shave, brush your teeth, went to breakfast, went to a big room, had a mass briefing, went out to the airplane, started the engines, things that was very routine, and 110 fighters 8 tanker aircraft, and who knows how many other support aircraft, all were coordinated into this giant mission to go up over North Vietnam, about 70 miles northeast of Hanoi. My job was in a flight of 4 F-4s that were escorting 8 F-4s that were dropping chaff corridor, aluminum foil that you drop that blinds the radars so that they can't see the airplanes. And after about 2 hours of flying, air refueling, and getting together, in we went. Okay? So I'm going to show you.
You want me to bring this up here?
Please bring that up. Okay. And if technology works, we will. So we're inbound. We're escorting the 8 F-4s, the other airplanes around. They were called wild weasels. They were firing strike missiles, which were missiles that go into the radar beam and guide to the radar. Plus other aircraft that are doing things. What I'm going to do here is play an audio tape that was a little cassette recorder, so it's not real clear. It wasn't digital like we have today, but we turned it into digital. And it was in the airplane of my flight lead. We were 4 ship of F-4s. I was number 4. Our call sign was Trigger, and I was Trigger 4. There are a lot of other flights. You'll hear Dayton, Palm, and Cadillac, and whatnot. Red Crown, and they call it Crown, was the radar. It was a ship on a radar on a ship in the Gulf of Tonkin that was tracking us. So you hear Red Crown talking on the radio. I will apologize for some of the language on the tape, but as you can imagine, in the fog of war and the complexity of that mission, folks got excited and kind of reverted to our basic instincts, you'd say. So don't get appalled. I'm sure you've heard it all before. And what you're going to hear is this flight going in. We maneuver for some SAMs, which are surface-to-air missiles that are being shot at us. And you're going to hear up to my getting hit, and then the confusion there. My point here is these are years and years and years of training that hopefully become second nature, but even so, when we get to that point of combat, you can see that things get very complicated very quickly. And you have to revert back to that training, that discipline, and that knowledge that you've gotten during your training opportunities. Okay, so I hope this will be easy to hear, and I'll talk a little bit through it as it
Mike's on.
strikes were just fired. This is my flight lead talking, trigger lead. Z-Man was number 4, Zimmerman was those are SAMs being fired. You pull up, and the missile just misses. So they
Yeah, I got it. Got a missile coming at it? Yeah, I'm watching birdies on your right. Got it out. There you go, that's right. Got a cutter of where we're going over there, correct? Got him. Field spirit transmission. How's that? Negative.
Pods on mean the electronic countermeasures are now sending out the signals to jam the radars.
Okay, trigger 1 and 2, come back to the right, come back to the right, there's something sound wave.
That's trigger 3, and there's 2 MiGs that are chasing us. So that's why he's calling the flight to come back to the right.
Okay, I got somebody. Okay, come back, left trigger 1. Okay, we gotta make up here close by.
One of my other flights, pistol flight, actually shoots down the MiG just before I'm hit. You'll hear a nice shot, and that's the missile exploding.
Okay, they're way out at our 8 o'clock, I can't see them anymore. Okay, 2 and 3 and 4 are. I got looking from behind us. They're already down. Reflection, I got one. Okay, I got the 3 and 4 back at our 7 o'clock.
The missile just hit my airplane.
What do you say? Let's go 3, 6, 6. What do you got, Nick? Back there, I'm doing it. Connor, go 3, 6, 6, 0. 23, save position on lead. Okay, Bert, there's 2 at your 9 o'clock. You're clear right now. We're down on the deck. Okay, is that line there? I don't know. Okay, looks like an F4. Yeah. Okay, here's north. Where are they going out there? Out there at 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock. Yeah, I got it. Okay, hold it down. Let's go over here. Trigger, come back left. Come back east. Now the name is good, be quiet. Roger that. Right down there to the left. Okay, Trigger and Pistol, you still with me, Nate? Negative, we're disengaged at this time from you. Second? We don't have you in sight, you're on your own, we've got an engagement back here. Okay, Nate, Thomas, Paramount. All Paramount. Pistol, you pick up. Trigger 1 and 2, you Pistol 4 and 10 pace. 6-5. Okay, there he is down there. Trigger 3, I got you in sight. Come back east. Trigger, I got you in sight. Come back east. I got 2 shoots over Trigger 4. Over clear. I need to know what's going to be on. You see him back here behind us? Take it in.
Okay, so you can see that it all happened real quick. And what happened were 2 MiGs came in. We didn't see them until the missile was fired. We broke, but the missile still guided, hit my airplane, blew the tail off my airplane, and my airplane just started falling out of the sky on fire. So my backseater and I had a quick discussion. He's going, you got to get us out of here, get us feet wet, meaning get over to the Gulf of Tonkin so we can punch out. And I said, I'm trying, Mel, and I'm trying to fly the airplane, and there are no controls. All my lights are on, warning lights, fire lights, and everything. And I said, okay, we're going to eject. And he said, okay. So the next time we were right side up because we were just kind of falling through the sky. It's because the ejection seats push you up this way. I pulled the handle. Mel went first. Half a second later, my seat went. And then poof, I ended up in the parachute. My flight went back to air refuel because we run out of gas real quick. And then they were going to come back in to try to see what our conditions were and whatnot. Okay. Now, to take that into a different perspective, I'm going to show you now the electronic scenario that was built from reviewing radar tapes, audio tapes, interviewing the North Vietnamese pilots that were flying the mission. I don't think they actually interviewed the guy that shot me down. But this is North Vietnam, Hanoi over here, China's over here. I actually got shot down up here by a lake. And this is our flight coming in. Cadillac is another flight we shot down big that day. In fact, number 4 in Cadillac flight was with me at the Air Force Academy in my squadron. And he got to see me get hit and saw me falling with my back end on fire. So we're coming in, Trigger and Pistol are escorting Dayton Palm, and you can see the MiGs take off over here out of Fukien, and then you'll see in a little bit 2 more that we think came up out of
Okay,
Canada.
15 degrees high and take a hit.
Again, we're escorting this 8 ship of F4s. The MiGs are now starting to
Okay,
come
let's
in.
go. Let's get out of here. Okay, here's everything's looking good. Okay, are you all right, Joe? Yeah, I'm good. Still figure pressure's all good. Okay. Where is
The
he,
majority of talking on this one is coming from Cadillac flight, which is down here. We're chasing these 2 MiGs.
Okay. Pacific turn right, anytime. Yeah, they're starting their turn. We're going to fluid tour around them. Okay. Everybody's on our right.
Kemp was one of the major big airfields in North Vietnam.
033. Who are you on those? Okay, I got somebody on the nose, he's not squawking for.
That is 0043.
Okay, wait. On the nose, 8 miles.
Major on the nose, 8 miles from Cadillac. You'll hear Cadillac flight take a shot. They'll show they'll show a picture of the videotape of the missile going.
Okay, I got somebody. Okay, come back, let's take a walk. Okay, we got to take out page 1. Clear the fire. Okay, you got the big flag. Okay, circle, got the largest fire, the last one. Take fire again.
Cadillac's fired 2 missiles.
Okay, okay, one fire. Okay, 1 mile.
That's the missile coming off the airplane.
Nice shot. Looks like somebody got one. Okay, I got the 3 and 4 back in our face.
And then right here, that missile, Big's getting shot down. I'm getting.
Keep going in front of us.
He went low to 319.
He shot down, Meg that shot you.
Got a hold of the phone?
Different. That was big 1 and 2 came on us. They shot down 1, 3, and 4. Now the flight gets all spread out. Makes egress. They just descend supersonic to leave. Turning around to re-chase them, and they're just out of range.
Behind you? 7 o'clock. What's the roll of the digging? Okay.
Cadillac 4, Bingo +5. Cadillac reversed. We got somebody right behind us. T-Bow 14 at 9.
Okay, there's a big explosion in the mountains. Somebody in the sky.
And we would practice these types of scenarios, and I'm sure Colonel Peebles did the same thing, over and over. But you never know. It's like a football game, I guess. You never know what it's really going to be, or a basketball game. So, the whole point there is to show the complexity of the type of events or things that you may get involved with, maybe not in the military, but in something else. And again, your training, the experiences you've had are very important as you go through this. So I don't know if you saw a little box on there right next to a lake, but basically that was the crash site. I remember after my parachute opened and I looked up and I went, wow, and I didn't have the feeling I was falling. I just thought I was hanging there and I went, this is kind of neat. I'd never jumped out of an airplane before. I had practiced, the procedures, but I'd never actually done it. And then I saw this black smoke coming up and I went, whoa, and I went, what? That's where the airplane hit. And then I got the sensation that I was starting to fall. So I did, like training, I cut the 4 lines at the back of my parachute so I could steer it. And I steered towards the lake, because you always heard, get feet wet, go feet wet. Well, not in a lake, okay? That's to go out into the ocean so you can get picked up and rescued. So I turned away and I went to the side of the hill, and I could see the ground starting to come up, so I said, oh, I am falling. And I knew I was falling because it's very quiet. I could hear this zing, zing going by. And that was folks shooting at me, trying to hit me in the parachute. And I went, whoa. So all of a sudden, my mind had to switch from flying this airplane, this world that I was used to a whole new world of being on the ground in North Vietnam. I mean, never planned on that. Been trained for it, but never planned on it. But now there was a reality of it. So I did my parachute landing fall. Probably was a very poor parachute landing fall. I sprained my ankle. Tumbled, was all tied up in the risers and the lines and everything. And then I said, well, I got to run. I got to get away from here. So I started running. And I ran for about 30 seconds. And it was probably 110 degrees, 99.9% humidity, and I went, whoa. And I said, and I turn around, and I'm dragging all this stuff, probably 100 pounds of gear. My raft, my survival kit, my parachute, and it's all being dragged through this probably brush about this high. And I went, I don't need to be, so I said, slow it. So now I unhook everything. I had 1 bottle of water, frozen bottle of water in my pocket, so I drank that. Tasted good. And then I said, okay, now I got to figure out what I'm going to do. And I went back, okay, what course was it that they told me about what to do when I hit the ground? And they said, be calm. Yeah, okay. So I was pretty excited, and I said, but I've got to hide. So I started looking for a place to hide, and it was on the side of a hill, tall grass, and not a lot of places to hide. So I crawled around for a while. I got as far from the crash site as I thought I could. And then I took out my little radio. We had 2 radios in our survival vest that was on what they call guard frequency, which is our emergency frequency. And I turned it on, and I said, this is trigger 4 alpha. Can anybody hear me? And nothing came back. Well, I knew the airplanes had all left. They had gone back. They were air refueling over the Gulf. And I figured, well, it's going to be about an hour for that to happen before they can get back in here. So I went and hid a little bit more, and then I sat and waited. And sure enough, off in the distance, I heard the jet engines coming. And I said, well, I think that's my buddies coming back to see what went on. So now this is the same flight lead, trigger 1, trigger lead, and they got the little recording. And this is going to be when they came back in and found the crash site. I got to talk to them on the radio. They gave me some real good advice. I want to see if you catch it. And I kind of said to myself, like, yeah, okay. And what was nice is they actually got to mail this recording to my wife. After she was told that I was shot down, I was in missing in action category. But she got to hear the tape and hear that I was talking on the ground and that I was okay. So here's the tape of ground contact when trigger flight comes back and talks to me on the ground.
Trigger lead disappeared. Is that the lake down there right below it?
Yep, there's the lake and there's a crash site. So now they're in the area. And I hear them.
Let's report about 270. Roger, okay, I think we have the area in sight right now. Okay, but try to keep it tight, but let's go south of the fence.
And that's Red Crown saying go south of the fence, and the fence is the Chinese border. So we're very close to China. I could have ended up in China as well as in North Vietnam.
Okay, spot him. Okay, got it.
Radio had a switch so you could put it to beeper and send out a loud noise, and that was a emergency distress signal. You'll hear that come up. And I activated that on the ground. Guard is that emergency frequency that everybody's on.
Trigger 4, this is trigger lead on guard. Come up 4, on guard. There's the crash site, the front area right there, they came down on the hill. Okay, got the site. Trigger 0, trigger 0, come up and guard. Yeah, I got it. Okay. Here's everything. Where's where? I got it, they've got all this right now. First, back and keep it on 3 o'clock. Okay. Beeper, beeper, come up, boys. Beeper, beeper, come up, boys. Beeper, beeper, come up, boys. This is trigger lead. Trigger 4, come up, boys. We copy trigger 4. Are you Alpha or Bravo? Making cross turn, trigger. Tell me your condition, trigger 4. Baker, come up, boys. We need you. Come up, boys. Trigger 4 Alpha. Copy. Trigger 4 Alpha. What's your condition?
okay.
They're all around. We got one. We got one again. Second. We got big one again. Trigger force is trigger lead. We hear you. Hide. Do a deep act. We got a star coming.
SAR is a search and rescue, so they already activated the forces to come up. There had never been a rescue that far north, so they were going to attempt, but usually they didn't work.
Okay, and trigger. 130. Okay. Good. I'll go down one more time. Yeah. I'll go down one more time.
Flight lead said, I'm going down one more time, and that was him coming down to a low pass over me. I waved, and he rocked his wings and went off. Back to the tankers, air refueled, came back in an hour later, and at that point I'd already been captured.
Where was your backseater?
Okay, I was Trigger 4 Alpha, and Trigger 4 Bravo was the backseater. And that was Mel Matsui from Hawaii, and he ejected. I saw him in the parachute. We were both coming down. He was a couple miles from me. He never came up on the radio, no contact made. So we didn't know his condition, although we knew he did get out of the airplane. He, in fact, also got captured. During my initial interrogations, they always told me that he died in the ejection or at some point. And he went to a different camp than me. He went to the zoo. I went to the Hanoi Hilton. They were telling him the same thing, that I had died. So after the peace treaty is signed and we got back together, they put us together as when we were shot down. That was the way we were released. About 6 months later, I got to see him. And we both said the same thing. They told me you were dead, as we saw each other. But we made a big hug and we got to see each other again. But he had never made contact, and he was captured also, but taken a different route than me, where we never saw each other. So now I'm on the ground, disconnected all my gear, and all of a sudden that world of being involved with 100 airplanes, crews, briefing, my friends, my support, I'm all alone in North Vietnam. And I really think that I'm going to end up being captured because I didn't think they could get that far north to rescue me. But I was still going to hide and I was going to resist to the best I could. And that's where it really hit me that, wow, now it's me. How am I going to be? How am I going to react? What am I going to do? I had a lot of guidelines. I had the Code of Conduct, which I don't know if you've studied that, but it's a set of guidelines on how you'll handle yourself in a prisoner of war situation. I had core values: integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all you do. And I had my training, where I'd been and what I'd done, to include my upbringing with my family, my religion. All these things now all of a sudden came to roost because it's real. But more importantly, I had to now deal with how am I going to meet the enemy. So I looked around and I had my .38 revolver with 6 bullets in it. I said, okay, that's something I can use. Had a radio. I'd already let people know I was alive. And now I'm hearing the hooting and hollering because this wasn't the military that was finding me. They were farmers, basically, or militia. And I could hear them hooting and hollering, getting closer and closer to the crash site, which is me. To where all of a sudden I'm down in the grass and I can tell that they're very close. And I go, well, I want to stay alive. I knew folks that said they wouldn't. They would rather die. They'd go in with the airplane rather than face a prisoner situation. Well, I want to get back home to my wife, my family. And so I said, you know what? I'm not going to confront them unless I have to. So I left my .38 in my holster. And I laid down on the ground like this, and I waited. I could hear them coming closer, and I knew they saw me when it got quiet. They were hooting and hollering and yelling, and then it got quiet, and they went, now what do we do? And I was going the same thing, now what are you going to do? So I'm laying there, and the first thing that happens is my left arm is pulled up like this. Now, I didn't have my wedding ring on, we didn't fly with jewelry, although I did have a watch on. And whoever that was, because I didn't look out, took my watch off. So they obviously wanted my watch. Okay, then they kind of rolled me over, and that's when I went, okay. And I swear, I was looking at the big barrel of a musket. I mean, because it was a barrel that came in and got wide at the end, pointed right at me, and I went like this, and they're all excited, and I'm excited, but I'm trying not to show it. And a little, maybe 6-year-old boy grabs my helmet, and he runs away with my helmet. So he got his trophy.
Still sitting there, probably.
Yeah, yeah, probably. And so then they kind of sat me up and made sure I wouldn't do anything. Someone came over, got my gun, and fired the 6 rounds in the air. Just shot the bullets out of the gun, and then did something with it. I don't know where it went. So stood me up. One of the first things they did was take my boots off. And then I had a G-suit on, and I saw a G-suit sitting over there. It's got a big zipper. And a guy took this big knife and was ready to cut the G-suit off me. And I went like this, and I showed him the zipper. And I don't think they had ever seen a zipper. And they were amazed. Whoa, you know. And so then they started going like this with the zipper, you know, going, okay, that's fine. And so take my G-suit off, stand me up. Did the traditional pole, arms around the pole, tied my arms back like this, and I said, well, now I guess I'm getting ready to go somewhere. You know? Well, just about then, a guy in uniform showed up. And again, these were mainly militia and hill people. So the guy in uniform showed up and told them to undo my arms, sat me down, and gave me my boots back on to put. So I was thankful of that, because the next 6 hours, I got marched out of the jungle. And I don't think I would have enjoyed being barefooted. But so I had my boots on, tied me back up, and for the next 6 hours we marched out. I had this, a bicycle, a soldier with a bicycle on each side of me, and then a big group behind, and I just walked through different villages. And very interesting walking through the villages. The older folks, well, the younger folks were kids, I mean, or our age, and they just kind of stood there and just with interest as we went through the villages. The older folks, especially the older ladies, had switches, and they would just whip me in the back. So they weren't happy, you know, and they were, but that was about as much aggression that I saw until I got to Langson, which was a bigger town. They put me in a cave, and that's where I spent the night. They took, where my arms were here, took the poles, went up over a hook and kind of pulled the poles back up, and that's where I wasn't hanging in the air, but I was pulled up. And that's where I was for a couple hours as they prepared a press conference. Okay, and during that press conference, I went into a room, probably about this size, big camera, something in Vietnamese behind me, a banner, I don't know what it said. And full of the press taking movies and whatnot. Didn't really talk to me. I didn't say anything. The one thing I remember doing, though, was looking straight at the cameras. I wanted to be sure that they knew I was okay. And then I kept doing this, and I wanted Jane to know that I was thinking of her. And in there, later to come out through different mechanisms of releasing information, a picture came out of me sitting there in the, and again, that was the phrase. And today I don't know what it is, but there I am in my flight suit. We used to have longer sideburns then, and I just spent the night in the cave, and I'm on my way to Hanoi.
So that's the second day of you being a POW.
At that night. I got shot down around, I'm guessing 3 to 4 in the afternoon. And this is probably maybe early morning, early the next morning. Yes, sir.
How old were you when you got captured?
24.
Couple years after college.
Right, yep. Graduated in 1969. Got married in 71. This is 72. 3 years after graduating from the academy. Okay, so fairly young. One of the younger guys. And I really found that out when you'll see in the pictures later when I got moved into the camp, the Hanoi Hilton. But those folks look like my grandparents. I mean, and we look like their kids when we came in, because there had been a long stoppage of the bombing over north from 1968 to late 71, early 1972. So then when we got shot down, we brought in a lot of good information as we were coming through. So there I am. They put me in a truck, and that was the wildest truck ride I've ever had, because the roads weren't in great shape, and they had me handcuffed, and they tied the handcuffs to the top of the truck, and I'm bouncing all over the place as they're trying to work through. But I remember getting on a ferry, and I was blindfolded. So on the ferry, though, they took my blindfold off, and I could see the lights of Hanoi, very dim, and went across the Red River, and then we got taken into the camp. The trip there, fairly uneventful.
Did anybody speak English at that time?
No,
Zero.
no. So we didn't have any conversations. You know, they had me, and I was with them. And I get taken into the Hanoi Hilton, and there's my room for the next month. And I was a month in solitary confinement. Talk about being alone again, just eager to just make sure someone else is around. I mean, I get the feeling that I'm all by myself. They put me in the room, and the first thing that happens after the guard leaves, because this was a row of rooms I didn't know about, it's called Heartbreak Hotel, is the name we gave it. And I hear, "Hey, new guy." And I go, "Whoa." And so I think it's the North Vietnamese playing a trick on me, because they had read me all the riot act on do not talk, don't make any noise, or you will get, bad treatment. And I hear, "Hey, new guy." And I go, what am I going to do? Do I acknowledge that? And I hear, "Hey, step up on the benches." So I put a foot on each bench, and the top were some bars, and I look, and way at the end of the hall, at the other end, I see a hand. You'll get to see him here a little bit. Bat Masterson, a Navy F4 backseater. And that was the first American I made contact with. And he wanted to know my name, because that was the most important thing we did, is get the name of anybody we saw alive out. And there were ways of getting information out of the camp. So made contact, and then I started hearing the tapping on the wall. And the guy next to me started tapping, and we had all learned the tap code, which is a matrix of, like A is 1, 1, and any head nods, you probably know about that. So I didn't practice it. I didn't think I'd need to use it, but I started learning real quick. Here comes the tapping, and so we made contact there. And then I spent a month in solitary confinement, interrogations, mainly wanting to know what my mission was, and then wanting to learn personal information and whatnot as we went through. And then after a month, all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, pouring rain, they take me out and they put me into a larger room, which is probably as long as this is, and probably from that wall to this wall. And there were 25 other Americans in it. And they put me in a larger room, guys that had been shot down before me and some even after me.
Are you still in your flight suit and everything?
Oh no, now I'm in my prison garb.
Okay.
They took all that stuff away. I had a mat you could lay on, I had 2 sets of prison garb, had a tin mug that put the milk in, had a towel, had a pair of socks, and that was about it.
And so by the time you got in Hanoi Hilton, you did not have broken legs, broken ribs.
No, I had my sprained ankle.
So relatively speaking to some other people, you were very fortunate.
You bet.
And the ejection worked as good as it could have.
Yep.
Ejected.
You bet. Yeah. And again, I put that all on training. I knew the position to get into. I knew to eject at a certain altitude. Actually, we ejected a little too low, but it still turned out okay. So all that worked. Very fortunate.
How much food did you get? What was the typical day of food?
Well, for the first 6 days, I don't think I got any food. I think
Water?
They gave me tea,
Okay.
and that's what I wanted. It was hot tea when it was 100 degrees outside. That's okay, I drank it. I remember drinking it and it just coming out of my pores, you know. But no, it didn't have any ice, you know. But yeah, and a typical day was half a loaf of bread, because it was a French prison, so they had a bakery, and half a loaf of bread, which we thought were sesame seeds in it, but as it turned out, those were boll weevils. Which didn't matter, we ate them. A cup of milk in the morning. Lunch was routinely what we'd call weeds, some type of a green leaf that was boiled, translucent noodles. And then at night, it would vary. Every now and then, we'd get like about a third of a can of like some compressed meat. But again, mainly pumpkin soup. Sundays, we'd get a bean soup, which was very good, but very oily and tasted like kerosene. And as we found out when we came home, it was kerosene. And they put that in to kill the bugs in our stomach. And it worked. We all came home in fairly decent shape. We all had our teeth in excellent shape going in. And unless we took a problem into the camp, we all came home with our teeth in good shape.
So they wanted to keep you alive for propaganda
you
purposes.
betcha.
They were not like some of the terrorists now where they're beheading you for propaganda purposes. They wanted to keep you alive to show that they were attempting to play the game with the Geneva Accords.
Well, they also knew that we were a ransom.
Yeah,
You know,
ransom.
they held that over the United States government, that we are holding your folks here. And we know that there's a lot of people that want them to come home as we go through. So yeah, treatment wasn't great. I got to write 2 letters during my 8 months. They both came after I got home in the mail, which was kind of unique to get these letters in the mail. Jane got to write once a month. I never got any of her letters. She got to send a package once a month. And none of that arrived. They would say put vitamin pills, potato chips, long underwear, those types of things. We never got any of that other than the vitamin pills. And the vitamin pills, they would cut in half, and they told them to mail the big prenatal vitamins, so they're very strong. They'd cut them in half, and we'd get half a vitamin a day. So I take a vitamin every day. I swear that really helped us get through in fairly decent shape. You know, we got sick, we had fevers, we had diarrhea, we all got dysentery, but nothing we didn't expect, living in that kind of environment. Yes, ma'am?
What did you do on a normal day? Did you sit in the cell all day, or did they make you work?
Well, when we were in solitary confinement, you saw what I had. So basically, I got a fairly rigorous exercise routine, where I would do push-ups, sit-ups, run in place, and whatnot. Once we got into the bigger room, we were like a squadron. We were divided into flights. We had committees. I was on a communication committee, and we tried different techniques on how to communicate between rooms. We had hand signals, like A, B, C, D. And if you look at someone the other way, you could talk this way. We had an escape committee. Even though we didn't try to escape, there were 2 escapes made. They weren't successful. And the camp for years after those escapes were not a fun place to be. So there was a lot, unless you were guaranteed success with your escape, which meant you had to have someone on the outside helping you. We talked about escape, but we never attempted it. We had entertainment committees, because each night we'd play a game. The most fun game was the newlywed game, where you really would kind of make friends with somebody. Well, you'd become a couple, and then you'd play the newlywed game with them. Or you'd talk a meal. Each of us would talk a restaurant and a meal we ate, and I'll tell you, everybody's drooling, 'cause your senses could just tell, what it was like. We would talk movies, and movies we'd seen, or, we had church services on Sunday. Every Sunday, someone had an opportunity to lead a church service. It wasn't a mass or anything, but it was a time to reflect. So we had plenty to do. And the North Vietnamese kept us going, and we tried to keep them on the defensive. Like, they'd come in every day and count in the morning. Was it 15? Okay, good. Well, then they had to do it twice. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, in the meantime, as we get over to here, someone would move across the room. So we'd get back and it wouldn't be the same number. And he'd have to count again. And so pretty soon, and we call these riffs and little games we play. Or move one of the pieces of furniture. They had a bookcase one time filled with books of propaganda. And so we would turn it backwards, so the back of the bookcase was there. And, well, that one got us in trouble for about a month. They cut our rations in half and whatnot for not being, not having good attitude, is what they'd say. And then we'd get in one-on-one interrogations where they'd want to get information and whatnot. I had a gun held to my head saying that if you don't answer this question, we are going to pull the trigger. And that was another one of those moments I had to decide. And on that one, I decided not to. I called their bluff, and he walked away. So, so there was enough to keep you busy. But there was still a lot of boredom, and whatnot. Okay.
We have about 10 minutes to go.
Yeah, okay. So,
Colleen has a question over there.
go ahead.
Sir, how did the Sante raid affect you?
I was after that. The folks that were in Sante, okay, can you bring up that? Okay, I'll get to your question in a second, but here's some film that were taken. We didn't know that was being taken, but it's film that was smuggled out of us in the camp, and you can see a courtyard and that's the garb we had.
Can you find you in there?
Yeah, I'll be here in a second. That's our whole life rolled up in a mat. When they said move, that's all we did, roll it up and move. And this is my group, the group I was with when I told you I got moved into a larger cell. And you'll see me coming here in a second. And I see these guys at reunions now.
Did the civilians see? Did your wife see this?
No.
They didn't know?
After I came home.
Yeah, but at the time, she didn't really see you and know that
No, these weren't even released at the time. Okay, and here I am here. Okay, coming through Kevin Chaney and Bill Talley and folks. And this was, I remember that walk and seeing some bushes on the side, and I thought I saw a camera in it at the time. Well, as it turned out, they were taking pictures. And what we do all day, we talk, learn about each other, exercise, as I said, hang our clothes out. Drones would fly over every day, and the way we hung our clothes out sent a message so that we could get information back home. And this is the day of the peace treaty, the 29th of January. They formed us up, and they said, you know what, the war is over, and you're going home, and you will go home in 4 groups, 2 weeks apart, over the next 60 days. And then they dismissed us, and we went back to our room.
Did you have any warning that the peace...
No. All we knew is that the bombings had stopped.
Something was happening.
Because the Christmas bombing of '72 was massive. I mean, there were bombs going off everywhere in Hanoi. And then it stopped, and then they told us we're going home. We knew we were getting close when they gave us what we call our go-home clothes. And that's our go-home clothes in the bag. We went into a room, they stripped us naked, checked us over. I smuggled out a piece of paper with addresses under my tongue. Got dressed up, and now we got to walk out without a blindfold. The gate we walked into blindfolded, and that's the main gate into what they call Hualo Prison, which is not, we term the Hanoi Hilton. And this is the first release, and we get a feeling that we're going home. We think this is actually happening. Of course, we didn't know this was going on. I was at another camp now called the Zoo. And on the 14th, we knew something was up when this C-141 with a big red cross on the tail made a low pass over the camp. And we said, you know what, I bet folks are going home today. And that was this group here. Put us on a bus, took us across the Duma Bridge, which was a target that a lot of us had dropped bombs on. I have no idea how these pictures were taken. Okay, that's across the Duma Bridge. Went to Gialam Air Base. where they unloaded us, and we walked in formation up to the release point. The C-141 landed. They formed us up, they called our names. Went over to an Air Force colonel. He said, "Welcome home." We said, "Great." You know, we had an escort officer that would walk us off to the airplane. And this is Ev Alvarez on the left. He was the longest held in the north, not the longest held prisoner. That was Colonel Thompson in the south. But Ev Alvarez was up in Hanoi for 8.5 years. And here's the process of walking. Here's Bat Masterson, the first American I saw, the guy that waved at the other end of the hall. Took us, the outside engines of the airplane are running. The inside are off. Jack Inch was a Navy F4 backseater. Okay, and this is me coming off with my escort officer. And then behind me is Mel, my backseater. He came off right after me. Took us on the airplane, we walked up the ramp, everybody's obviously excited. I remember getting a cup of chocolate milk, and that tasted so good. As soon as the last one was on, as we're taxiing, they started up the right side engines, and the airplane took off. And obviously a pretty exciting time in the back when we got airborne. And about there is when we finally believed we're actually getting released. Because up till then, there was a lot of ups and downs. You're going home, you're not going home, and whatnot. We flew to Clark Air Base in the Philippines. Okay, and we stayed 3 days there. I got to make a 10-minute phone call to Jane at 2 in the morning. Put a uniform on, did all medical tests, did interrogation. We were interrogated again by our own folks. And then we flew off on the 141 and flew into, I came into March Air Force Base. And when you got off the airplane, they said, "You have to make a statement." And I have no idea what I said. Okay, I said something. But out of the corner of my eye, sitting over here, is what I was waiting for. And sure enough, that's us meeting each other on the ramp. And now it's what, 42 years later? And she was still in bed when I left this morning. Yes, sir.
What condition did you come home in?
I was actually in good shape. I had lost about 45 pounds. I went in about 180. I came out around
Yeah, about 2
135.
minutes.
Yeah, about 135 pounds. Again, the key, I hope you don't have to go through it, but if you do, anything you're going to face, you can get through it. And you do that by reaching inside your gut and basing your actions and how you approach things on your training and how you were brought up. And what you're doing today in Junior ROTC and with all your plans in the future, you're developing that background that'll be able to have you take on anything. Okay? So, we've got another minute or two. Anything else? Yes?
So how long were you at the prison?
8 months, almost to the day, yep. 29th of July, shot down, released on the 29th of March.
You were one of the youngest people. Who was the leaders of the...
The leaders were the old, at the time of shoot down, the most senior ranking.
Who was that?
So John Flynn was our, we call his code name was Sky. He was the most senior officer, not the longest there, but the most senior in rank when he was shot down. And he was our overall commander. We had squadron commanders, flight commanders. We had efficiency reports written on us for our time in prison. That's an interesting OER.
All righty, well, everybody give a round of applause. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate you coming.